Is your first reaction to an insect gross? Most of us feel the same way. Did you know that they're actually very interesting? We thought that would be a great idea to educate you all about insects that can be found in Maine. In this video, we hope that you will learn how we can benefit from insects in our natural ecosystem. The first major reason we should value insects is pollination.
Pollination is the process of transferring pollen from one plant to another. As this bee crawls over the black-eyed Susan, it is both gathering and depositing pollen. The black-eyed Susan has a black center with yellow petals around the edge. As the bee crawls around on this mound-shaped center, a fine yellow powder sticks to its legs. At the same time, powder that has been collected from other flowers is being shaken off. This is a process called pollination. The goldenrod is a very different flower. Instead of having a single flower on every stem, there are large clusters of small, cone-shaped flowers. The bee will crawl over, collecting and depositing pollen in the same manner. Pollination helps plants to continue making and distributing new seeds, ensuring there is always a next generation of flowers.
Now, let's take a look at several of the unusual features that make insects so amazing.
Different insects have different types of life cycles. There are two main types, the complete life cycle and the incomplete, or simple life cycle. A field cricket is one insect with an incomplete life cycle. The field cricket starts as an egg, then hatches as a nymph. Finally, it ends its life as an adult. The nymph looks a lot like the adult, but smaller. Also, nymphs do not have wings. The other kind of life cycle is a complete life cycle. A complete life cycle has 4 stages. One insect with a complete life cycle is the milkweed tussock moth. In its life cycle, there is an egg stage, a larval stage, a pupal stage, and an adult stage. In the milkweed tussock moth larval stage, it eats milkweed. The reason for this is that there's a poison in the milkweed that the moth is immune to. If an animal eats 2 to 3 milkweed tussock moth larvae, it will die. Now let's take a look at physical adaptations in insects.
All insects have a head, thorax, abdomen, and 6 jointed legs. Many insects can share the same ecosystem. This is because each kind of insect has a different physical adaptation. Let's look at legs, for example. All insects have femurs and tibias. However, they are different for each insect. For example, the hind leg of a golden northern bumblebee has hooks on its tarsi to help cling on to plants. Widow skimmers, on the other hand, have slender legs with sharp hairs on the tibia for catching prey. Insect adaptations develops over time. Different generations adapt to different weather in warm or cold climates. Insects also adapt to the plants in their habitats. Insects are very picky. They only use certain plants for food or shelter.
Energy is transferred to animals either directly from plants or from other animals that eat plants. The species that has the largest role in transferring energy is insects. In fact, we are so dependent on insects that we will die without them. Furthermore, insects have adapted around native plants. Native plants are plants that have lived in one place long enough that they have adapted around other plants and animals, and other plants and animals have adapted around them. On the other hand, invasive plants are plants that have been recently introduced and upset the balance. Humans have taken over 95% of the land in America. If we plant more native plants, we can help support species that need them. Eating native plants is one problem insects face. Another problem is climate change.
Imagine having no food because we lost all of the insects that pollinate our food plants. If we do not stop climate change, we may lose all the insects that pollinate our crops. Climate change is a change in global or regional climate patterns caused by increased CO2 levels in the atmosphere. The insects that will be most affected are the ones that have close connections to the specific plants. An example of this is the milkweed tussock moth. If the climate gets warmer, the milkweed plants may not be able to survive, and therefore, the milkweed tussock moth may also die off. On the other hand, insects like the eastern saltmarsh mosquito may not die. Mosquito eggs tend to hatch sooner than normal when it's warm. The more mosquitoes we have, the more diseases will be caused, such as yellow fever, malaria, dengue fever, and the chikungunya virus infection. Perhaps mosquito could also adapt to sucking blood from new animals, which also allow them to tolerate climate change. Even if some insects survive climate change, any shift in insect numbers will have dramatic effects on the ecosystem. To prevent this, we can find ways to slow and maybe even stop climate change. For example, we could walk more often since cars and buses release gas into the Earth's atmosphere. Another way is to keep recycling to help reduce the need for more production in factories.
Humans cannot live without other species on this planet because there are other species, such as insects, that create the ecosystem that is essential to our survival. Fortunately, some extinctions take a while, so if we begin sharing our property with insects, we should be able to save some of the biodiversity that is still here. Here are 3 ways to help insects in your own backyard. 1. You could save some of the leaves that fall on the ground each fall. Insects that are trying to find shelter from the cold will use these leaves. 2. Put a small cup or bowl filled with stones and clear water out for insects to drink. 3. Use carnivorous insects to control the unwanted. Insects can be very beneficial to humans. We use insects to make products that we use in our everyday lives, such as some dyes and sealants are derived from insects. Insects are used to test flu vaccines. Even silk comes from insects.